This couple never legally owned their home. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein, let's check out this article about this couple who apparently never owned their home they bought at auction. Let's check this one out. So a Gold Coast couple never legally owned the home they purchased at auction. A court ruling fines. What's going on here? This ain't good. So it's a home buyer's worst nightmare. Purchasing your dream home, moving in only to find out years later it was never really yours. Well, I hope they get the money back. That's the situation Queensland couple Jess and Jackie Moorcroft have found themselves in. We bought the house and we moved in, and then we got sued, Mr. Moorcroft said. And it's just this slow-moving nightmare ever since. The family are now packing up to leave the Gold Coast property they bought at auction 5 years ago, after the Queensland Supreme Court ruled it still belonged to the previous owner, 83-year-old Heise Architecture. The couple moved to the Mermaid Beach home from Victoria because one of their children suffers from a lung condition. They hoped the condition would improve away from the cold Melbourne winter and closer to the salt air. In March of 2018, they purchased the house in Francis Street at a mortgagee auction for $1.265 million. It is now worth more than $2.7 million according to court documents. What? Has Gold Coast property really gone that crazy? We'll have to see what it is. Anyway, what the Moorcrofts didn't know when they bought the property was that Miss Architecture had alleged the house had been unlawfully mortgaged as security for a loan by a relative who later defaulted. Miss Architecture had placed a caveat over the property in an attempt to stop the sale because she could not afford to apply for an injunction in court. But after negotiations with the mortgagees who sold the property, she agreed to remove it in exchange for $40,000 prior to settlement. The Moorcrofts paid for the property and it settled on the June 1st, 2018. Soon after, they were unable to transfer the home to their names because the Register of Titles had placed a second caveat over the property after Mr. Architecture contacted them. So fraudulently mortgaged by criminals. How the hell did this happen? This sounds like a complete and utter nightmare. According to court documents, the registrar's caveat was put in place after Miss Architecture wrote to the Queensland Titles Office saying her home had been fraudulently mortgaged by criminals. She told the registrar she had made a police complaint, but made no mention of the agreement to withdraw her caveat in exchange for $40,000, the court documents said. As a result, the title remained in Miss Architecture's name, but the Moorcrofts paid for and have lived in the home since 2018. In September 2018, Miss Architecture brought legal action in the Queensland Supreme Court in an attempt to get her house back. The Moorcrofts have been fighting to keep the home since that time. In February this year, Supreme Court Justice Lincoln Crawley found they had no legal interest in the property because the title had never been transferred into their names. I guess it just goes to show you can buy a house at auction, you can settle on that house, you can pay for that house, and you can still might not get the rights for the house. We've lost the house after 5 years. We just never thought that was possible. The court found they only had an equitable interest in the property, and Miss Architecture was still the legal owner with the title in her name. The court found the mortgagees who sold the property had been alerted to the allegations of fraud before the property settled. After the property went to auction, Miss Architecture made a complaint to police about the alleged fraud. A handwriting expert gave evidence during the trial that Miss Architecture's signature had been forged on the loan documents. With Miss Architecture now suffering from Alzheimer's disease, her daughter, Jennifer Halleck, acting as her litigation guardian throughout the Supreme Court proceedings. Miss Architecture sued the mortgagees who sold her house, listed on the court documents, as several different entities. In addition to Jess and Jackie Moorcroft, the Register of Titles and the State of Queensland, the relative and the lawyer were named as defendants. In February, Justice Crowley found the 7 mortgagees described in the document as lenders of last resort were not entitled to exercise the power of sale over the house. He found the mortgage entered into using the property as security was null and void. The court accepted that Miss Heise's signature had been forged and said the mortgagee's attempts to verify that Miss Heise had executed the mortgage on her home before selling her property were wholly inadequate. As a consequence, the mortgage against the property that led to the sale was found to be fraudulent. So, the court found that the Moorcrofts did not have a legal interest in the home because they were not able to register the title but were entitled to recover the $2.7 million from the mortgagees who sold the house for breach of contract. The Moorcrofts now fear enforcing that judgment against several lenders will be costly and difficult to pursue in the courts. After already spending more than $300,000 in legal fees, see, it's only ever the lawyers that win in this situation. They want the state government to compensate them after the court found they were also victims of fraud. Yeah, I can't blame them. That would be easier and cheaper. While the judge said the state is liable to compensate the purchasers as they have been deprived of their equitable interest in the property because of the fraud of another person, no orders have been made. Documents show lawyers for the state argued against awarding compensation during the trial. There is an endpoint here for us, which would totally ruin us. It feels very desperate at this point, Mr. Moorcroft said. I mean, the buyers are really how did their lawyers let it get that far with the conveyancing? Oh, this is a nightmare. This is the last bloody thing you expect when you're going to buy a house, isn't it? His wife said she'd been living in fear due to the stress of losing the property for the past 5 years. We're just normal people who've bought a house. Financially, it's enormous to lose everything you've worked for, and the government should be there to back us up because we've done nothing wrong, and they are just fighting us all the way. Oh, don't worry. They'll make you pay your taxes. They'll fight you for that too. They'll fight to pay the lawyers to screw you over the Australian way. During the trial, the Moorcrofts argued Miss Heise should not be awarded the house because her conduct in withdrawing the caveat so the settlement could be completed. Their lawyers told the court Miss Heise's removal of the caveat was an indication to the world she no longer had an interest in the house. But Justice Crowley found her conduct in removing the caveat in exchange for $40,000 was not misleading or unmeritorious. She was clearly pressured by the mortgagees and their lawyers to withdraw the caveat, he said in the judgment. Yeah, that sounds like what happened, doesn't it? That really sounds like what happened. He said Miss Heise was faced with the prospect of costly legal proceedings brought by the mortgagees to have the caveat removed, which she could not afford to defend and believed she would not succeed in. While she did agree to the withdrawal of the caveat in consideration of the payment of $40,000 from the mortgagees, that was done on the expressed basis that she reserves all her rights, the judgment said. Bond University legal academic Laura Lee Cameron Dow said, as the general rule, home buyers needed to be careful when dealing with caveats. It can be one of the difficulties that if you think it's a straightforward purchase and you use a conveyancer, that's fine, she said. But as soon as it gets complicated and you get a caveat, you need to go and find a lawyer because you're heading into hot water. And if you don't know how to manage the process, it will bite you. Yeah, that's probably the best advice that we should all take away from this article. The question of compensation by the state will be considered when the matter returns to court on Friday. So there you go. Let's have a talk about this one, guys. There's no winners in this. I feel sorry for the old lady who obviously got screwed over by family. Dodgy criminals. People should be going to jail for this. And the buyers think you're just buying a house. Shit. There's no winners here. Well, sometimes it's worth paying for the lawyer. As always, guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. Check out Heise BIM or Heise Does, and if you're a fan and enjoy the channel, you can support us on YouTube or Patreon, use our referral links, buy our pocket squares, or call us if you need an architect. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.